And let me tell you a little bit about our guest today. Really a very, very interesting person. He's the new Ravens team president. Really not so new. A couple years ago, April 1st, 2022, became the Ravens president. He oversees all business areas, including finances, budgeting, non-football personnel, corporate sales, operations, stadium activities, communication, and any other business ventures. You can say this gentleman does it all on the other side of the football. For 3 years prior to coming to Baltimore, he worked at Monumental Sports and Entertainment, last serving as president of Monumental Basketball. And for those of you who were here a couple years ago, we had Ted Leonsis, who owned that. Great guy as well. Sasha previously accrued 13 years of NFL experience, including 5 seasons with the Cleveland Browns, where he served 2 years as executive vice president. Prior to that, he spent 8 years with the Jacksonville Jaguars, last serving as senior vice president and general counsel. Sasha was born in Boston, attended Hampton University, and graduated from Harvard Law School. He spent time as a radio play-by-play announcer and analyst for the school teams. He also hosted a radio show focused on jazz music, which he remains passionate about today. He's sort of a Renaissance man. Sasha and his wife, Paige, have 2 sons and 2 daughters. Well, welcome, Sasha. It's a pleasure to have you here at the CEO Club.
Thanks, Doug. Thanks. I'm getting old. It's a lot to
Just
read.
hearing everything. If you could fill in the gaps for me a little bit and I guess some people in the audience, how do you go from Harvard Law School to working in professional sports? I mean, that's a very unique career path.
It is. First, I'd say I started growing up trying to be Isaiah Thomas or Darryl Green in my front yard and driveway. So that passion stuck with me. And when I finished law school, I figured out there was this small firm with this stately diplomatic gentleman named Dick Cass in Washington, D.C., Wilmer Cutler Pickering, and they had a niche sports practice, but it was thought of as to be one of the nation's best law firms, counseled mostly presidents and various federal higher ups on SEC investigations, things like that. So when you really got in hot water in D.C., you called Wilmer Cutler. But Dick had carved out this nice niche practice, and it's because he represented Jerry Jones when Jerry sued the NFL for the rights to sell his own Pepsi marks. Wow. And so Dick had carved out this nice piece of business, and I said, I'd love to get into transactional work, and if I could combine that with sports, that'd be awesome. So I spent 3 years there training at the law firm, mostly doing finance, M&A, general stuff, non-sports related. But then the opportunity came to take on a few deals, and so Dick assigned me to probably 5 or 6 matters, the last one of which, while Dick was at the firm, was the closing of Steve's purchase from Art Modell to buy the Ravens. So things come in great circles sometimes in life, and I had the great privilege to not only close that financing deal for Steve, but link back up with him 20 plus years later in my career. So awesome opportunity to do that, and went in-house from Wilmer to Jacksonville Jaguars as in-house counsel, learned the business. We had 70 employees. I was doing just about everything that came into the door. So I learned the business backwards and forwards. These were very small, family-operated outfits. And I've had the pleasure of coming into the league at a time when it was really growing up. Most of the teams didn't even have lawyers when I was coming into the business in the early 2000s. So learn the business on the football and business side, and try to bring a lot of that versatility and experience to the Ravens.
You're sort of at the right place at the right time. You mentioned Dick Cass, and I know shortly after he closed the deal, he became the Ravens president. And he was there, he was here many years ago. Great guy. He was there with the Ravens, I guess, 18 years. Revered there
short
as
18.
president. Revered there, and you took over. Talk about that transition, taking over for really an icon like that.
Yeah, you come in and do a lot of listening. As I emphasized to myself, really, is that this is the most successful organization I've ever been a part of. On the field, off the field, in the community, around the league, around the industry, heralded as they do it right. They are patient, they pursue excellence, but they also have a really strong familial culture. And so Dick has done a great job, Steve has done a great job in terms of just fostering that type of environment. And then obviously Ozzie, Brian Billick, John Harbaugh, Eric DaCosta, they have just conducted a masterclass in how to, against all odds, and really the system in the NFL, which is designed not to allow teams to be consistently good year over year, decade over decade, find ourselves in contention for the playoffs and championships every year. And so, we're grateful for what they do and the amount of work that they and their teams do, but it's a great combination of talent.
We thought it was going to happen last year, Sasha.
We did too.
This is the year.
We'd love to go back and replay that game.
Well, everybody here would as well. There in management and business, there is a concept called MBWA, which is management by walking around or wandering about. And you talked about, when you came in with the organization, you made it a point to talk to everybody in the organization and to listen. A lot of people don't listen. Tell us specifically what you learned from that.
Yeah, first, I think it's just a phenomenal exercise. I try to get myself into, our staff is split. Probably about 80% of our staff is at the Castle in Owings Mills, but 20% of our staff is down at the stadium. And as you can imagine, that presents a challenge. We've got our football side of our building and then our business side. And so I really take a lot of time to try to, really fill those gaps in and push people back together. We design our buildings that way, a lot of our events that way. But I think it's really important, especially in a business where we're so public and there's so many things written about us from our stadium extension and renovations and, what player we're drafting and whether our offensive coordinator is going to be here next year and we lost. It's really hard for us, I think, to communicate across so many different things that we do. So we have about 3 or 4 small businesses inside this one business, but we're a very small company. People are always surprised at this. We have about 300 employees full time. And so we have this enormous platform and public profile. But in reality, we're a significantly small business. And so that allows us to be very intimate. And I know there's probably some new hires that I couldn't place a face to a name, but I know everyone personally, know their personal stories, and I think that's really important. And it's a special part of being in the NFL at a club that allows us to have those personal connections and get people to really buy in. Because people work hard, a lot of weekends away from families, missing a lot of kids' games. And so we sit down and listen to those folks, see how we can best support them. We hold a high standard. We want excellence from everyone. But we think those one-on-ones are really, really important. And really one of the things that we started there is ensuring that at least once a month, once every other month, manager and young folks are sitting down, folks that report into them, talking about not only how they're doing in terms of performance, how they can be supported, where do you want to go on your career path? We have a lot of people that stay at the Ravens and never leave because it's a great place to work. The affiliation is one of the best brands we believe in Maryland. So it's really important for us to engage with them and this new generation of folks. They are not shy about sharing what their thoughts about what we should be doing, what we shouldn't be. And then I think the other thing to keep them motivated, really engaged, so they understand that we're invested in their development and growth, even though oftentimes we don't have a lot of transition and turnover.
Again, back to business, the owner or the president or the CEO, who's ever in charge of running the organization, they really set the tone for the company. And we talk about family, and I think the family concept that Steve Bisciotti has set for the Ravens. And I know family is very, very important to you. So talk about that family culture with the Ravens and how important that is.
Yeah, it's vital. I mean, our business is set up to face a lot of adversity in a very public platform, right? And so everybody has an opinion. We're the most popular thing by far, the NFL is in the U.S. certainly. And so that puts a lot of pressure on you. And, as I said, one of the brilliant things about us is we're so small and intimate, so it creates this special nature. And you can feel what happens during the season in our building. If we lose a Monday, Tuesday is rough, and so we figure out, just like a family, how to give each other space. But I think Dick was a master at this, is he could be the glue and the ointment, so to speak, to make sure everything kept moving. And there's times when we'll go into each other's offices, whether it's Ozzy or Eric or John or myself, and just check on each other, prop each other up and make sure that they know that we're supported. And we know we're not going to be successful week in and week out and be undefeated every time. But that we come together from business and football and department to department to support what we do is incredibly important. And again, because of the stress of the business, and the size of the business, we have this very special thing that's super pressure packed, but really powerful when we stay together and kind of navigate those rough waters when they come.
Teaming together to make it happen. That's so important. I talked about all the multitude of things that you're responsible for, on the other side of the football, so to speak. And that's really the business side of the NFL, which is a multi-billion-dollar platform. Just a week or so ago with the draft, over the 3-day draft, I think there was over 700,000 people in attendance physically, and who knows how many millions and millions and more were watching on TV. Yeah. What are you doing as president of the Ravens to keep that momentum going, which is so powerful right now?
Yeah, so, some real challenges are facing the sports industry. Media has, with the fall of cable television, and we've seen it with, I know the Sinclair folks, I'm not sure if anybody's here, so I'm sorry if so, because I know this is a little painful for them, but the RSNs and the cable model has been disrupted. Sports business and the American model of sports business, which is now being distributed across the globe, has been one that's really been supported by media rights, and that's being disrupted a bit. As streaming services come on, right. Subscribers are down. People always ask, why did the NFL go to Amazon, of all places, to put their Thursday night package? Well, can anybody name me another entree into households that has more than Amazon Prime right now? I mean, we all have become accustomed to it, and most of us think about it as ordering soap or, in my case, an enormous bag of diapers for my 2-year-old. But the reality is Amazon is in 80% of households in the U.S. Cable can't say that anymore. Broadcast television, you're accessible, but how you access broadcast television, there's no one platform. So what Amazon represented was actually a unique opportunity for us to partner with a great technology partner, a streaming partner, but also just the predominant commercial retail outlet for American households. So we've, at the NFL, I think, have been very focused on media rights. And then at the club level, the challenge with that is the home experience has become so good, we have to fill 71,000 people down there at the bank Sunday. And so a big part of what Governor Hogan, Governor Moore, myself, Dick, my predecessor, talked about when we passed HB 896 is how do we get that $600 million and keep M&T Bank relevant? How do we keep the experience special so that people say, I cannot stay on my couch, I have to come back down? So we're really excited about some of the renovations that are coming in the stadium. That's very important to us, but we're really grateful for our fan base. So we don't look at this as a profiteering expedition. We invest a ton of our cash back into the business, into the stadium. The state built the stadium, if you can believe, and this sounds so lovely, for $240 million. To try to build a stadium now, you're talking about at least $2 billion. And I wish I could tell you that inflation was responsible for that, but when I come back next lifetime, I'll be a general contractor. So we I think have smart, if you look around Buffalo, Tennessee, they're all building stadiums. They're going to cost the state and the teams $2 billion of debt. $600 million, we're really confident that M&T Bank can stay relevant. And a large part of that is because Steve's allowed us to invest $250 million of his money back into the stadium over the 20 years we've been here, and that's the commitment and partnership we have to the stadium and to this community and the state. So this is a special franchise. I don't mean to sound obnoxious. I've been here long enough, and I'm not talking about them anymore. I'm talking about us. But we really do, try to approach it very humbly with a community mindset, but with excellence in mind and just delivering back great experiences for our fans. And, I was sitting down on the field before the AFC Championship game and just so proud of what the Ravens have brought to Baltimore. The eyes of the world being on downtown Baltimore, and, in there when Thailand had his kickoff, punt return rather last year. versus the Rams, and that moment and seeing the look on kids and families' faces that they'll never forget that moment. So that's a special unifying force that I think the Ravens can be here. But as you know, we're very heavy in the community and want to kind of give back there too. But business-wise, I think for us, we're really focused at the league level on the media rights, at the local level on the stadium experience, and fortunately we have Steve that allows us to invest a lot of our cash back into that, and a great partnership with the Maryland Stadium Authority too.
Nice to have deep pockets, I can tell you that. I'm going to ask another question or two and open it up to the audience. You talk so much about the renovations, and the $600 million that made available from the Maryland Stadium Authority. And the Baltimore Business Journal had a great, really article, 4-page article on you guys, on the renovations you're making. You just mentioned that. But the goal is to create and to harness a new generation of fans. Talk about that.
Yeah, so we arrive here under the cloak of night. I had this ironic experience of being in Cleveland in my career and hearing the stories about the Browns leaving, and then coming here to be with the Ravens and hearing the stories of the Colts leaving but the Ravens coming. So I got this unique perspective on how Art Modell is thought of here, how he's thought of in Cleveland, which is slightly different, but also to know the Irsay family and how they're thought of here, and then how they're thought of in Indianapolis. But it's such a special thing to have one of these franchises in Baltimore. Make no mistake, is one of the great sports towns and certainly one of the great football towns in America. I think for us, the way we look at the renovations and staying relevant is we have, if you think about who's going to buy a PSL to get into the stadium, a lot of people were at Memorial Stadium for a bit, and then 2 years in 1998, we start playing at M&T Bank Stadium. And we had a lot of people who are now retired, and even some a little bit older than that are all the same kind of ilk and age, that are now retiring. And one of the challenges we actually have is that we have a lot of people that buy tickets to the game and come to 4 or 5 games, but don't sell their tickets to other games, but keep their tickets. And so we're sold out every game. But there's certain games when you look up and you say, okay, I've seen the Ravens enough, and we're going to win this game, or the weather's a little bit bad, and we really want to make sure we're doing everything to counteract that. So the stadium experience in these renovations allow us to do a couple things. Is one, differentiate products. Right now, if you come into our stadium, we have a GA product, upper and lower, a club, or a suite. If you walk into most modern stadiums now, there might be 15 or 20 different products and experiences you can have. And so a lot of what we're doing is starting to expand the types of experiences that we can provide fans. And we wanted to make sure we did that very thoughtfully, so that this wasn't just 7 different types of suites that corporations could buy and folks that had significant wealth, but we really think the backbone of our great home field advantage is the GA fan that comes in. So the biggest investment that we're making is actually in a pretty enormous plaza on the North Plaza between us and Oriole Park. And that's going to allow fans to have a retail opportunity that's much better. Some of you all have been in our store, and there's not a lot of things I beat up on, but our store is ridiculously small. Nobody thought about retail in 1996 when they were designing the stadium. But we'll have 10,000, probably about 13,000 square feet of retail space that we'll add. And it's hard to buy some of the products as Ravens fans that a lot of our fans like to don, and you see around other NFL teams. We'll have some local collaborations with artists on apparel. We're working with Under Armour on a few things that we'll do there on the footwear side as well. So all those things are exciting that showcase our brand, and the store will be open 365 days. We also are going to add a small stage, bring that whole tailgate experience that happens in Pigtown and Lot B. And people are trying to, kind of pull that experience together. But we really want to, but Jimmy's Seafoods has a great one. If you can find it back behind this warehouse or that, we really feel like there's an opportunity on the footprint of our stadium to bring an experience that's second to none. And so you've seen some similar things. We think ours will be unique. I've challenged my team with making sure we have the best crab boil in Maryland on every game day on the stadium, because why wouldn't we? So we're able to do some of those fun things to really pay homage and respect to the roots of Baltimore and the culture of Baltimore, and really bring it to light on stadium game days and have it accessible to all of our fans. That's really important to us.
Sounds fantastic. I'm going to ask one more question and open it up to the audience. You know, we hear so many times that the Ravens are really a model franchise for the NFL. Harbaugh's been the head coach, and I think since 2008. Ozzie Newsome's been there forever. I think Eric DeCosta's been there. He started as an intern, I think, in 1996. You know, talk about that continuity and why has that become so successful?
Yeah, it's so hard to achieve. So hard to achieve. I mean, we set out in 2016 at the Browns, and the ownership group there had asked me to take over the football operation. The way they explained it to me is because I could pull everybody together. And I said, we want a long-term plan. We came up with a 4-year plan. And 18 months later, they were tired of it and they gave up, fired me, fired our coach a couple of years later. I was one name in a long list of folks there. But the essence of what we were trying to do is recreate what we had seen in Pittsburgh in our division, in Baltimore in our division. And what I'll give credit, because I think a lot of it is Ozzie, honestly. I mean, Steve is great, and he's the part that really makes it work. But I think Ozzie coming in here and just being such a humble leader, a guy who worked well and understood what it took to be successful. He had watched with Belichick in Cleveland and been a player as well and brought that experience and has that gravitas. But that humility that he has is amazing. And I think it kind of made everybody feel comfortable that it's going to be okay. And even in lean years, you watch Baltimore and their mindset around developing young players and sticking with players and not being stubborn about it, but making sure that we had a long-term mindset. And so when you think about the notion of John being here, I think he's going into his 16th, 17th year coaching. It's just unheard of, you know, and if it weren't for Tomlin in the division, who's the other one, you know, with Pete Carroll and Belichick retiring, these are the two, you know, giants. And you've seen the success those two franchises have had. So we're really grateful for that. And I credit Oz, and I'll also give Steve a shout out. There's just not a lot of owners that are that patient and delegate and have that much security not to tinker and tamper. So, you know, you look at San Antonio and, you know, I think in basketball, probably the Cardinals in baseball would be the other team that people look at around sports that say, if you want to just look at success over the years and just operating a organization with integrity and excellence, that continuity is just so important. Get the great people, put them in position to succeed, get them the right resources, and then be patient enough and trust them. And Steve does that with us. So hopefully I don't screw it up.
I don't think you will. Look what they've done with the Orioles. I mean, it's a perfect example. And again, you've seen the juxtaposition of working in Cleveland to working here in Baltimore. You know, and sometimes you just don't go all the way to the top. You have that little blip, and you really can appreciate where you are. Any questions for Sash? Ken?
Saki, next week is the middle jewel of the Triple Crown.
Yeah.
The Preakness Stakes. And Maryland has suffered under very, very poor management and leadership for many years. And there's been an erosion of the value of the Preakness and the popularity of horse racing. What recommendations would you have for, let's say, this transition, which the Maryland General Assembly just ratified, essentially a takeover by the state of the racing assets of the Stronach Group? And Mike and my very good friend, and Mike and I participated in this process. Tom Kelso was really the engineer behind the creation of a thoroughbred racing and operating authority.
Yeah.
What would you advise and recommend to the state of Maryland, who is now going to create a New York Racing Association-like entity, to bring back the value and the importance of the Preakness and horse racing at Pimlico?
Yeah, no, important and a driver. I think one, really understand the state of that industry and where it sits. And so, you know, horse racing has a tremendous history and legacy, and Maryland within that legacy is it's really important. And I think there's a smart way to go about rebuilding, in essence, that brand. And Tom was he was my partner, and I grew to be a friend of mine. We negotiated like hell over our lease extension, but we were friendly throughout. And I think one of the brilliant things about the Stadium Authority, and the reason you're seeing so many more non-stadium, non-sport initiatives and assets be rolled into the MSA, is because it runs lean. And so I'm a big believer in making sure that you find the right people, then you got to get out of the way and let them do what they need to do. And a lot of times, especially when you have multiple people involved, whether it's public or private, when you have a lot of masters, a lot of people have different ideas about what to do. But I think the first thing I would do is just understand the path, the opportunity in the path, find the resources, find the right leaders, and then get out of the way and go. And then thinking mid and long term, because there's probably not a quick solution for it that we can afford, right? And so I think, I don't think it'll take as long as people are anticipating, but I think it's a good idea to make sure that you clear a pathway so that you all can go. And I'm a big believer in Tom's work, and I know he thinks a lot about this stuff and has experience at the Stadium Authority. But the reason the Ravens have one of the best relationships with any public entity in sports, and I think it is the best, is because the Stadium Authority is separate. The only thing we probably like is our own separate pool of money, so we don't have to go back to the General Assembly, but I shouldn't say that too loudly.
No media's here. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, my name is Tia Morsi. I'm president of Central Scholarship. And recently, the Shadi Foundation announced this fantastic partnership with College Bound and College Track and Bridges to help students in Baltimore City have access to higher education. My question to you is, a lot of funding has been focused on students in Baltimore City. And although College Track is a national organization that has its footprint in PG County, are there any plans of scaling up to help students outside of the Baltimore City area? I serve the entire state of Maryland, and it's really important to me that the Ravens supporters are Marylanders, not just students.
Yeah. One of the things that we've talked about is how we communicate our philanthropy. So I'll give you the inside scoop on how that came about. Steve has emphasized to us that he wants deep, rich, heavily invested, legacy, impact type of philanthropic endeavors, and to do that through the Ravens. Bridges and College Bound have been proven partners of the Ravens for a long period of time. We have Ozzie Scholars, we have Ravens Scholars, a lot of programs we didn't mention at that release around really College Track, but also our College Access program. $50 million. We were able to attract and recruit College Track to come, and they brought $10 million in. We haven't decided exactly where College Track is going to be. So we are focused on making sure that we understand. We talk about Baltimore, we think about Greater Baltimore. A lot of our scholarship money right now goes to the counties outside. So right now we have about 15 young scholars that are interviewing at the castle this afternoon with our committee, and we'll roll out about $5,000 to $10,000 scholarships for a number of what we call our Raven Scholars. In a few weeks, we'll announce our Ozzie Scholars, which are HBCU recipients, where we make sure that we had committed basically $1 million $1 million over a period of years to each of the HBCUs in Maryland. And a lot of those students also come from outside Baltimore proper. We don't really think about it that way, but we understand when we get to these moments, we need to do a better job of communicating that what we're representing is people from across, and the citizenship and population from across Maryland. We've got to be a little bit careful because the commanders don't like us to get too far south. But we're setting up a lot of meetings with county executive out in Frederick, Howard County as well, and certainly Johnny O and I have had a lot of conversations about things that we can do. So we're very deliberate about, and we're, I think, becoming more intentional about doing things outside the city. But we're really excited about that College Access program. Education for us is probably our primary focus. We believe it is the threshold to and key for young folks transition and really to catapult. And I'm sure you believe the same, because I hear your work's in the same place and along that same alley. So TBD exactly what form those programs will take. They won't be exclusively the work that we'll do, but a lot of the work that we will do and continue to do will also expand beyond the bounds of the city proper. But thanks for that.
That was from Tierra Dorsey, who's celebrating their 100th year. Isn't that correct this year?
Awesome. That's awesome.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Steve.
Sashi, thank you for the memories. Really, I mean, we just get to cherish it week in, week out, year in and year out. So I just want to open up and just thank you to the entire organization. So from a leadership perspective, I'm just curious about your relationship with Steve Rashad. Does he give you the autonomy? Like, what is his management style? Were there any surprises, like, going into this? Did you have any differences, and how have you gotten through any of that?
Great question.
Yeah, no, yeah, there's a lot of differences. We're trying to select players, decide, how much to pay Lamar. Do you fully guarantee a contract and be the first or second to do that? What I would say is I think great teams are built to work through differences and not bring the same opinion to the table. So first, I think he recognizes that, he's a savant of emotional intelligence and relationships overall, and he understands business really well. I think he does trust Oz and Eric and John, but he emphasizes myself and Dick that we need to work as a team. And he wants us to have a lot of different ideas across the table, talk openly, trust each other enough to disagree without being disagreeable, so to speak. And then when we come out of the room, we're aligned, right? And so that's one of the most remarkable things, is that when you face adversity like this group, you just don't see fissures. So we get around each other, and there's, it's all extremely competitive guys. And so, we all believe we have some pretty good ideas, but we get around and really support, and then we trust each other in each other's lanes. I mean, John's support of Eric through the Lamar negotiation was tremendous, and Oz and I were further in the background. And then seeing Eric and Oz support John, there's times when we think we should have called a timeout. There's no doubt, right? There's times when Steve thinks we should have taken that guy in the 6th round. I told you, now he's an all-pro. But through those moments, I think over time, we understand our job isn't to get the expectation is that we're going to get, not that we're going to get every decision right. Nobody does in business. We're not going to be perfect. But we will be held to that standard, right? It's very easy to say the armchair fan, who we love, we want that passion to say, you were wrong, you should have called this play, you should have played this player, you should have selected that player. For me, I have the easy job. I just make sure the beer is cold, which sometimes does get a little warm. We're fixing that. But to really support those guys through that, I think is incredibly important. And Steve is probably more involved than people realize on the football side because he cares so much about it. So he really does support and talk with Oz and Eric and John a lot. He leaves me alone for the most part, which I'm thankful for. But when we have big moments like the Lamar decision, like a draft, we come together and have a lot of good conversation, and then we laugh and hug it out. Sometimes yell at each other and cry a little bit together, but we come out together of the room. And we're always focused on the main thing, which is winning and winning together. So, special.
The Lamar thing was a pretty big deal. You guys didn't guarantee the entire thing, what people thought that you may have gone that route. How close did you come to not even getting that contract?
I'd have to shoot you, Doug.
There's no media here.
I don't want to do
no
that.
No media here.
No, it was a fascinating, probably one of the hardest negotiation circumstances I've seen, and I've seen a fair through my time as a lawyer and certainly negotiating sports deals. But you had an entire union that took advantage of a situation where you had a young man who was unrepresented, MVP, and so they put a lot of pressure on him to seek something that Tom Brady didn't get. A lot of other people who were in that position but were represented by agents didn't get. And I think, they put Lamar in, I think, a pretty tough spot. But, he has a wisdom to himself, and he understood how to keep an arm's length, as he does from defenders so well, from those whose interests weren't aligned with him. And a lot of people mistake Lamar because of his style of speech as just not as smart and as wise. He's got a wisdom that's beyond most normal human beings, even at the executive level. And so he understood exactly what he was doing, I think, throughout. And we're glad that we're able to reach a deal with him. But he pulled a lot of levers that gave him a lot of leverage. He ended up with a great deal for himself, and we were happy to get him under contract. It was not easy. It was a lot of stress, but we did it. And Eric led it. We had a lot of ideas to support him, but Eric and Lamar, I credit those two more than anything, through a trade request, through media reports. I mean, I remember walking into Steve's house just probably about 3 months before we got a deal done, and he had 2 or 3 TVs on, and every single TV, different talk show hosts, FS1, ESPN, NFL Network, they all had Lamar and the Ravens and disarray and all these negative perceptions of the organization. And that put some stress on us, put a lot of stress on Lamar, because for everybody who was saying the Ravens should guarantee the deal, there were, just as many folks saying Lamar is greedy and he had a bad year, he can't stay injured, and he can't read, the field, and he comes out and has an MVP season off the back of that. So we're happy to get through it, but a really, really fascinating chapter in business and organizational leadership and negotiation.
It's so fascinating now. The quarterback to make, $50 million plus. You know what the most money Johnny Unitas ever made as a Baltimore Colt? Who knows that? Most money Johnny Unitas ever made playing football. It was $250,000 with San Diego. He didn't make it with Baltimore. Remember, they traded. The most in Baltimore was $125. David, time for 1 or 2 more questions, and then we're going to wrap it up.
Thank you. I bridge the gap between what the sister said about higher education and then leadership. You're in a very unique space as a team president of a man of color. How have you navigated that space, being one of the very few team presidents of color in professional sports?
Great question.
Yeah, so very aware of history and legacy in this country. My folks, someone was asking me, why don't you have a Boston accent? In time I was being born in the 70s, it's really folks that had a lot of African Americans had moved to northern cities. So my dad is Kentucky. He grew up drinking from a colored water fountain. So I really represent, the first generation of my family that didn't grow up either in slavery or Jim Crow, right? So that's significant to me. So
Wow.
he emphasized that to us. My mom emphasized to us the importance of that, the importance of being aware of that, but also not allowing that to become the thing, right? Because the whole premise of the civil rights thing was to see humans as human beings and look beyond race. And so, they were both educators and slight hippies. And so, we had friends from all kinds of backgrounds. And I grew up in a city with people from all over the world and all different places. And even within the diversity within the African American community, where you had people whose family had grown up in Boston, you had people who were just in from the South, a lot of people from the West Indies. But I always remark at my dad's funeral, just looking across and just seeing people from all these different backgrounds, and probably had taken that for granted until that day about 5 or 6 years ago. But I think being able to be someone, as in business, being able to relate, the versatility you have to relate to people, to understand issues, to have some empathy, but also have key mission and focus on that mission and organization around how you go about your business and what you want to do. But it really comes back to kind of those 2 things, is that integrity and trust that you can breed and build. Your competency certainly matters. But I've fussed a lot with our PR team and the NFL because they always want me to do this black stuff, this, that, and the other thing, and I'm just like, I can talk about stadium renovations too, and so, but I understand the importance of it, and I think there's a balance there to have. So, it's not lost on me, the racial dynamics in this country, where we are right now politically, where we are as a league, with some of the challenges we have in terms of a 70% African American base of players that has really struggled to find careers in front office and head coaching positions that goes across college football as well. And you know, I'm adamant about making sure that for women, for Asians, Hispanics, Latinx, that don't show up in this conversation, that I need to be an advocate for those voices that aren't being heard, all within understanding that a diversity doesn't mean an erosion of talent, right, or a reduction of talent or lowering standards. That oftentimes, and what you see is the highest performing teams, you know, have that diversity. On my way up here, and I thought I was late coming in here, but I was on a call sit on the board of a company called Lafayette Square. It's one of 2 minority-owned business development corporations. So we raise somewhere between 600-700 million credit side assets that we sell out into the marketplace. Black-owned, unheard of, and you know, just excelling at tremendous rates. There's about 150, 200 BDCs in the country. We are in the top 10% of performance, and we continue to operate that way. So there's a pride within that, but there's also just a focus on keeping the main thing, as we always tell ourselves, which is we just want to make sure that we have great returns for our fans at the Ravens, for Steve as an ownership group, support for John and Eric. You know, I pride myself on just making sure the competency and performance is there. And then hopefully with that, I can also bring along some opportunities to open people's eyes that can come in a lot of different hues. Hopefully in time, that can come in a lot of different genders. We struggle right now in the sports industry, specifically getting women opportunities. And so big believer, and you'll see us continue to work towards improving some of those opportunities for folks that look like me and some that don't.
When you talk about opportunities, it's a great point, you know, hard getting in the upper echelons like you've been able to achieve, but I guess more granular than that is the fact that so many of the players have to go bankrupt after a couple years after playing.
Yeah.
And I know that's a reinforcement that you guys are looking at to train the players on the financial acumen that they need.
Yeah, we do a lot of education. They get it now starting in high school because NIL money is making its way down. College, they get it, and they get it from the union, and they get it from the league, and they get it from the team. So the guys, you know, kind of tune it out. The reality is we're given a lot of money in a very short amount of time, front-loaded, to really young people. And
don't have anything.
And so some of whom do, though. I mean, a lot of these guys are now coming in their league. I mean, listen, my friend's daughter went to UCLA to play basketball, and she's making a couple $100,000 a year as an undergrad playing college basketball. And she's playing at one of the great schools, but she makes more than any player in the WNBA. So a lot of these young folks are going to come into the league as this transition happens with name, image, likeness, and really the professionalization of college sports with a great sophistication. And the other thing that you've seen over the last 15 years, Jordan set the standard, but the sophistication of the professional athlete now is on another level. I mean, you've seen TB12 and some of these others, but you know, Kevin Durant, who named the college track center down in PG County, you know, he's able to do that because of his earnings. He's also set up his own private equity fund, and they are doing quite well. They are able to walk themselves into deal flow. You know, all these folks out there in Silicon Valley and want to act like it's really hard to get into the deals until Steph Curry walks into a room. And so these guys have figured out, you know, how to take their platforms, so to speak, and think about them in really sustainable ways. I'm hopeful that the union will begin, which is starting to wake up and really think about their independent commercial rights. You've seen this with one team. If you haven't seen it, it's worth going back and look. But NHL, MLB, players associations got together, and they've created a $3 billion company just licensing their own commercial rights, independent of the teams. I'm hopeful that what will happen, they'll start to spread that benefit out over the course of the lives of players who contribute to their leagues. But their constituency is really active players. So the rub with the system is to get votes, active players who also, by the way, will become alumni, don't want to give up a bigger check to the alumni. They also, established veterans don't want to give up a bigger check to rookies. So the system has some just inherent challenges to it, but there's so much money flowing through sports now. There's an opportunity, I think, to make this a much healthier, robust compensation system and to support our athletes over the long term.
Fantastic. Final question from the audience. Rob.
Yeah, thank you for being here. We're all familiar with the Taylor Swift effect. And speaking of platforms,
You talking about the refereeing or
this is
the?
this is not a Swifty question. This is a business question. So, do you have any insights as to the economic impact of that, and has it shaped any executive thinking about the intersection of sports and entertainment and what you might be able to do moving forward to increase revenue?
Yeah, make no. I say this to our group all the time. We're a licensing company that happens to play football. Football ends up being the content, but we're a licensing company, and you've seen it. You know, we were in Christmas in San Francisco, flying home at 2:30 in the morning, East Coast time. Crazy, right? Why? For additional revenue, but because there are some hundreds of millions of people that want to watch a great game on Christmas night at 8 p.m. Eastern, right? And so we very much are aware of the entertainment value that sports is. You know, it's a subset of, I think, the entertainment kind of spectrum of offerings out there, and it's in the NFL football in particular is by far and away the most popular. So of the top 100 shows on TV in terms of ratings every year, we're about 95 of those, NFL football. There's only 5, it's usually Grammy, Academy Awards, and maybe 2 or 3 other things happening. But year over year, and the popularity of the game is just gone. And what Pete Rozelle really did, really transforming, is he unlocked the power of taking our games, put them on television, licensing to someone else, they take all the overhead and they cut us a check. So we're a little bit like a Gucci brand where, you know, if you think about it, we don't spend a lot of money, but people pay us a lot of money to actually take our product and distribute it out or to wear it, so to speak. And so, you know, we've got a great licensing business, but we've got to keep football really at its core. And I think the league does a pretty good job of ensuring that. My sense is most of the teams, and we certainly are one, feel like we probably lean a little bit too much on the commercial side. But we certainly have understood the power of the ability of these influencers now from outside of our spectrum to bring more followership to us. And so you've seen at the club level and also at the league level, now you see so many people. The Knicks are great at this. So you watch the Knicks game and goodness, they have been bad for so long. They're in their moment, but their front row is just celebrities because they know as long as those celebrities show, everybody else will want to come into the stadium. I talked about the challenge to get people there. They don't have the same problems NFL teams do because it's 20,000 people in one of the biggest stadiums, biggest markets in the U.S. in terms of population-wise and wherewithal to buy tickets. But they understand that really well, is that the ability to bring that celebrity, that followership, that excitement from outside basketball. Jon Stewart and some of these other folks, Chris Rock and others, Spike Lee on the front. I mean, none of them can play basketball. But the excitement around being in an arena with them or Taylor Swift was amazing. We got a call from the NFL and said, you know you're going to have to figure out a suite or some situation for her. And we fussed a little bit about that, of course. But we found a spot. We were at the Super Bowl right next to her suite. So each team gets a suite or a half a suite at the Super Bowl. So we were one suite over from her. And I can't tell you how many fans came by and just to snap a picture and keep walking. Same picture that they could pull off the internet. But the power of some of this celebrity out there is just amazing. And fortunately for us here in Baltimore, and one of the reasons our brand is starting to really grow is Lamar is that way. I mean, all those celebrities and athletes in the NBA, I think you probably saw, and 2 weeks ago they had a poll, who's the non-NBA athlete that NBA players most love and are fond of and respect, and it was Lamar. So we've got to take advantage of that opportunity, and you've seen folks like Carmelo and others on it start to come to our sideline. So we're really excited about the opportunity to fold some of that in. And we look for the opportunity to make her cry next year, hopefully.
Definitely. We definitely want to do that. My final question for you, Sasha, and
Yeah.
again, thanks so much for
Yeah,
being
thanks
here.
for having me.
Looking back as when you took over as president of the Ravens, what's the one thing that you wish you would have done differently when becoming the president?
Yeah, I'd probably take more time with my senior leadership team to really focus them on, listen to them in terms of their ideas, but then really get them organized and galvanized around kind of a vision forward. We have done so much in a short period of time. Dick did not tell me we were extending a lease and going to do these renovations when he told me, you know, everything's under control, just come right in, it's a great time for you to transition. We were coming out of COVID. And the disruption from coming out of COVID, I didn't appreciate because I was new to the organization. But we, as most organizations, were in a moment where your team had been, and we had physically been out of the building for a long time. So I'm really coming in less than a year of the team coming back together after about a season and a half of being really disrupted. And I didn't do a good enough job understanding the dynamics that had emerged from that, but also the importance of really coalescing and reorganizing ourselves and aligning around a mission that we all bought into. I think the combination of a change at Dick's position with me coming in, but also that the tail of that disruption was something that I wish I went back and paid more attention to.
Sasha Brown, everybody. Thank you so much. See you all next meeting.